Welcome back to Gloved Up Garage. I've got a little bit of an update on the Cobra project. Heard back from the machine shop and the transmission shop. Both are months out from being done. So it's going to be quite some time before I can get this car back on the road. It's going to take a lot of my focus away from some of the other projects that we've got, like the Marauder and the Town Car. So unfortunately, I've decided to either trade this Cobra project or sell this Cobra project, and I've got it listed on my local Facebook marketplace, just as a project car, as a roller, no engine, no trans in the vehicle. Of course, it comes with the vehicle if somebody wants to obviously go pick it up from the machine shop, or I can pick it up, whatever the case may be. But for a clean, straight Cobra like this, the prices on these things are all over the map right now. I would think once it's put back together, something with the paint and the condition that's in, probably $9,000 to $10,000 in this part of the country, north central Kentucky area. Something with really, really good paint would probably get into the low teens and 12 to 13,000. But in this case, I just don't have the money and the time to put into this car. So I've got it listed, like I said, on Facebook. We'll see if anybody has any interest. I've had a couple of people ask me about it, possibly trading for, one guy had a pickup truck, which I really don't need a truck right now. I've got another gentleman interested in possibly trading for a trailer, which is something I definitely need right now. So car trailer is essentially what I want to trade for. 16, 18 foot, something like that. Something that's got some decent room. That way I can put the town car onto it and get it to the frame rack. So it looks like I'm gonna have to drive it into Louisville to get the frame pulled. But I just wanted to show a video of the car in its current condition. It's still up on jack stands. I went ahead and threw the wheels back on it. The interior's really good for a 98. Just that one wear spot here on the seat where the leather has worn through into the pad. Usually these seats are completely cracked from top to bottom, so in relatively good shape for being a 98. Door panel needs some love, which they share the same door panels as GTs and V6 cars, so looks like the foam is kind of giving way and the vinyl's starting to lift there. It was one of those things I was going to fix in the future, but again, we'll let somebody else take this project on and hopefully make this a running, driving car again. So to kind of end the Cobra project on a high note, I really, really wanted to see this thing back on the road, but from the beginning, I wasn't really sure what I was going to do with the vehicle. I didn't have a vision for it. It wasn't something I necessarily had on my radar of cars that I wanted to have in the collection, so to speak. So I don't have any emotional attachment. It is what it is. It's not, it's not like the Lincoln where I've got some emotional attachment to the car. It's not sentimental to me. It's just time for it to go. And hopefully somebody else can do something cool with it. All the parts for the Cobra are laid out on the floor. I got the transmission back from the train shop, picked up the engine from the machine shop, got everything laid out, ready to go. And that's because I've got a gentleman on his way to get the car. So it has been sold. We worked out a deal. It's more of a trade than it is a straight out sell. I've got the car down off the jack stands. All the brake parts are loaded up in the trunk and ready to go. Basically traded this for a used car trailer, a very nice low profile 16-foot trailer, which works out perfect since I work on a lot of Mustangs and smaller cars. That trailer pushing the limits, not really close to the limits, but the Lincoln and the Marauder is probably about the biggest vehicle I'd ever want to put on it. Anything bigger than that would just be too long, essentially, for that trailer. It's a 16-footer, so Mustangs work out fine. They're about 15.5 feet or so. But everything's laid out, ready to go. We're working out a deal where I'm going to get some cash and that trailer, which works out really well for me. That gives me an opportunity to invest in the Lincoln Town Car a little bit more too. Put some money aside for the Marauder, some of the future upgrades I'm going to do on it. So this deal overall works out very well. This is the second car to kind of leave, so to speak. Traded the Thunderbird Turbo Coupe for the engine, the trans, and some of the stuff you see laying here. Some of the stuff I had laying around already for the car, like the catback, was actually for another project. But for the most part, all the parts that are here came with this car. And hopefully this gentleman can get this car put together and get it back on the road. Really do this car some justice. I mean, it's a nice straight car, good title. This would make somebody a very nice car once it's done. And I hope that somebody gets it back on the road. That will pretty much be it for the Cobra. This will be the last time you see it in the video, unless I get an update from the owner where he's got it complete, or he sends me a link to his channel if he's got a YouTube channel, or if I just happen to see it out at a show somewhere, whatever the case may be. But as far as we're concerned, that's the end for the 98 Cobra on this channel. With the extra funds from the Cobra being gone, that will help out with the Lincoln. We're going to be able to get the base coat, the clear coat, some of the stuff we're going to need. I also was not able to find anyone willing to take this on as a side project on a frame rack. So that means it's going to go into a regular production body shop. And with that, they're going to work it into their schedule and get it up on the rack and do a pull. When I talked to him about the car and kind of explained what was going on, I did some photos, and something I kind of noticed, you may have seen it in the car in the background. You know, I don't think I've done a direct shot of this. I sent him a photo showing the distance between the back edge of the tire and the driver's front door, the left front door. And I did that because I believe that cradle is shifted. And when I sent him that picture, he said, you know, have you ever really stopped to measure that distance? And I said, no, not really. He said, it looks like that distance is smaller on the driver's side than it is on the passenger side. And now, looking at this straight on, pretty much the same angle, you can tell there's a pretty good distance between the two that is different. That leads me to believe that this frame is not only tweaked right here in this area where I can see the bend, but it's probably bent under the car somewhere that I just can't see. What we're talking about is basically the distance between here and here. Now, it looks pretty close in camera. You may or may not be able to tell, but in person, it's noticeably different. So that means that this frame would normally sit like this, but is down and swayed over, which makes sense. This was hit by a truck right here in this front corner, and I know the car bounced and spun 180 degrees. So with all of that, I know that there's going to be some major tweaking to the suspension and to the frame. And that's why I've chosen put this on a legit frame rack at a legit body shop and have them do these pulls. Sometimes this works out in your favor when you're trying to put these cars back together, that a shop is willing to take on a rebuild project like this. Instead of just billing the insurance company, providing them with additional measurements to show that there's more bends, they're willing to take these things on for the everyday guy like myself that's trying to rebuild a car. And they'll shoot you a pretty steep price up front to either scare you off or see how serious you are. In this case, I'm pretty serious. I need this done. This frame has to be straightened before I can do anything else to this vehicle. I mean, we're pretty much at a standstill until this frame is straight. So I'm serious as I can possibly be about this. Well, the Cobra is gone and I've got a new trailer, so I've got to do a lot of work to this thing before it's absolutely ready to rock. It needs some paint. It's going to need some wiring. The brakes aren't hooked up at the moment, so I've got to go through and do that. I've got to work on straightening out a couple of items on this, like the jack in the front's not in very good shape. It's welded off to the side, which it works for the moment, but I would really rather have a jack there in the middle so that it raises and lowers more evenly. The wiring right now, it's only hooked up for a 4-pin, and it really needs a 7-pin in order for the brakes to work. And then I've got to hook up this emergency brake controller too. So all of that has to be redone before it's really ready to go. But for the Cobra and some cash, I really can't complain. Yeah, it's going to need some work, but I wasn't expecting perfection. So it's a 16-foot with a about a 4-foot dovetail on the back, which works out perfect for lowered vehicles like Mustangs, some of the other stuff that I work on. This is actually made by Kaufman, so it's not one of the really expensive brands. It's a good bargain brand, a good entry-level trailer. It's pretty much all I need. Finish off the video and what I've been working on in the last couple of weeks, and to kind of explain what's taking me so long to get this one out. This is my 2008 Expedition. I've been working on this vehicle for the last 3 weeks now. It had an exhaust leak when I bought it from this passenger side exhaust manifold. If you've ever dealt with these on the Ford Expeditions, the Navigators, and the F-150s, these things have studs that hold the manifolds onto the cylinder head. The studs eventually break off and it causes an exhaust leak. Sometimes just in the rear, sometimes just in the front. It just depends upon the truck. Mine was broken off on the number 1 cylinder and the number 2 cylinder. And when they broke, the studs actually broke flush in the head on these 2 cylinders. I was able to access a couple on these rear cylinders and get them out without a whole lot of drama. The top stud on this passenger side has been an absolute nightmare. I have tried everything I can possibly think of. That's why all these tools are laid out. I've got a tight drill laid in here somewhere, my 90-degree drill. I mean, it has just been a mess trying to get this thing put back together. I'm not even to the point where I can put the new manifold in yet. I've got one more stud that's stuck. And to kind of give you an idea what you're looking at, this is the exhaust manifold stud. This part here sits in the head. The rest of this should have a threaded part that comes out, just like this stud right here. So you can see on this one, this part goes in the head, this part sticks out, this nut is threaded onto the stud, and that's what holds the manifold onto the head. And of course there's a gasket that goes in between. Studs break off flush with the head, and sometimes you can access them relatively easy. The number 1 at the top of the head is probably the most difficult to reach because of the shock tower that I'm leaning on. That is the hole that I'm trying to get the stud out of, and I have tried everything I can possibly think of. It will not take a weld. I have welded onto it at least a dozen times. That's what a majority of these nuts that are laid out here came off of, was trying to get that stud out of the top of the number 1 cylinder. And it has been a mess. Along with the exhaust leak, this has always had a steering pump whine when it was cold out. So I got the steering pump out and I've got the pulley off. It's actually over in the parts washer to get cleaned up. To get the power steering pump out is quite difficult also. I had to remove a lot of stuff and set it aside so I could actually get down to where the pump mounts. The air box and the coolant reservoir actually mount over here in the fender well. I had to take those loose and move them over. There's still one coolant line attached. I didn't want to make a huge mess, so I left it attached, but I wound up draining the radiator anyway, so I'll go ahead, unhook this and get it out of the way to make my life easier when I go to put it back together. Of course, the power steering reservoir is loose. I had to take the hose off of it because it ran down to the pump. And then there was one line that's attached to the pump under the truck, actually bolts up to it. And when I did that, it spilled power steering fluid, coolant, everything everywhere. So it has been an absolute mess in here for the last couple weeks. Once I get that last stud out on the passenger side and I get my power steering pump, the new one ordered, and when it arrives, I'll be able to start putting this thing back together. In order to get this driver's side out, of course I had the sway bar already dropped on this side, but I also had to take off the exhaust and I had to take the drive shaft loose to make enough room to get it out. And it has been an absolute blast. Even though this has been super frustrating, I have saved a ton of money by doing this myself. A dealer would charge between $1,500 and $2,000, do the exhaust manifolds along with that power steering pump. That's just for the labor. The parts would be another $500 to $600. I knew that going in when I bought this vehicle that it was going to need some work, and I was willing to put the wrench time in to fix it myself and save that money. That's what this channel is all about. Putting the wrench time in, saving a little bit of money, taking on projects that maybe somebody else wouldn't take on. Thank you all again for watching. I definitely appreciate all of the likes, all of the subscribes, and the comments. Remember to stay gloved up. We'll catch you on the next one.